I'm 87 years old. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I've watched over 200 people die. Not on television, not in some book. I was in the room. I held their hands. I heard the last words that came out of their mouths. Some of those words were beautiful. Some of them will haunt me until it's my turn. And I can tell you exactly who goes in peace and who doesn't. It's not who you'd expect. I'm going to tell you the 5 things that separated the peaceful ones from the ones who died scared. And number 4 still keeps me up at night. It started with my mother. 1999, November. She was 81 years old, and she'd been a church woman her entire life. I'm talking every Sunday, front pew, Bible on the nightstand, prayer before every meal. If anybody was going to go peacefully, it was my mother. That's what I believed. That's what I think she believed, too. But that's not what happened. In her last 3 days, she was agitated, grabbing at the sheets, eyes open but not seeing us. She kept calling out names. Some we recognized, some we didn't. And she kept saying, "I'm sorry," over and over. But not to us, to someone we couldn't see. I sat in that hospital room and I watched this woman who I thought had it all figured out leave this world fighting something none of us could see. And that shattered something in me. The following month, I walked into the Hospice Center on Middlebrook Pike and I said, "I want to volunteer." They trained me, and for the next 23 years, that's what I did. I sat with people at the end. That became my work. Not my job, my work. About 8 years in, something happened in 1 week that changed everything. There was a woman named Patricia, 91 years old, went to church her whole life, sang in the choir, had scripture framed on her wall. She died on a Tuesday, gripping the bed rails so hard her knuckles were white. And she kept saying, I'm sorry," to someone who wasn't in the room. Just like my mother. But what I saw 3 days later is the thing that broke me open. A man named Earl, 78. His daughter told me he hadn't been inside a church in 40 years, didn't pray, didn't read the Bible. But that man, he held his daughter's hand, he looked at her, he smiled, and he closed his eyes. Gone, just like falling asleep. Same hallway, same fluorescent lights, same smell of disinfectant. 2 completely different ways to leave this world. And I sat in my car after Earl passed and I thought, what am I missing? Now let me tell you what 200 deathbeds taught me. And I want you to listen because this is 23 years of watching compressed into a few minutes. The first thing, the ones who died peaceful, every single one of them had forgiven everyone. And I don't mean they said the words, I mean they actually let it go. I sat with a woman named Dolores, 84. Her sister had stolen money from her 30 years before that. Real money, her inheritance. And Dolores had every right to stay angry. But somewhere around 75, She called her sister and said, "I'm done carrying this. I don't need you to apologize. I need me to put this down." Her sister cried. Dolores said they never talked about the money again. When Dolores died, she went so quiet I had to check. That's what forgiveness looks like at the end. It's not for them. It's so you don't drag it into that bed with you. The second thing, the ones who went calmly, they weren't saints. I need you to hear this. They had hurt people too. They'd made mistakes. Some of them had made big ones. But the difference is, they went back. They cleaned it up. There was a man, his name was George, 79. He told me he'd been a terrible father in his 40s, drinking, absent, mean sometimes. But at 60 he got sober, drove to each of his 3 kids, sat in their living rooms, and said, "I know what I did, and I'm not going to make excuses." 2 of them forgave him. 1 didn't. But George had done what he could do. The rest wasn't his to carry anymore. George died on a Sunday morning, peaceful. His 2 kids were there. The 3rd one wasn't. But George wasn't carrying it anymore. The third thing, the ones who panicked at the end, and I mean truly panicked, most of them had spent their entire life running from themselves, staying busy, staying distracted, never sitting alone in a quiet room long enough to face what was inside. There was a woman, I won't say her name, ran a business, raised 4 kids, volunteered at 2 organizations, never sat still a day in her life. In her last week, she couldn't stop crying. She told me, "I don't know who I am without something to do." That's what running from yourself looks like at the end, because dying is the quietest thing there is. There's no distraction left, no television, no errands, no busyness to hide behind. It's just you and whatever you've been avoiding. And if you've been avoiding yourself for 70 years, that last room is a very frightening place. The fourth thing, this is the one I told you about, the one that keeps me up. The ones who fought death the hardest, who held on and struggled and would not let go. They were almost always the ones who had spent their life saying, "Not now. Not now, I'm busy. Not now, I'm tired. Not now, we'll talk later." Later. Everything was later. Their daughter calls and it's not now. Their friend needs them and it's not now. Their spouse wants to sit and talk, and it's not now. Their whole life was later. And then they're in that bed, and there is no later. And you could see it on their faces. The panic wasn't about dying. The panic was about realizing they'd run out of later, and they never did the thing. They never made the call. They never sat down. They never showed up. And now the people they kept saying, "Not now" to, were standing around the bed, and it was too late to say anything except goodbye. The fifth thing, and this is the one that changed what I pray for at night. The ones who went the most peacefully, the ones I will never forget as long as I live. They had something in the room with them that I couldn't see, but I could feel. People were praying for them. Not just family, people from years ago, people they'd helped out of their way, expecting nothing back. A neighbor they'd driven to the hospital at 2 a.m. A stranger they'd paid a bill for at the grocery store. A young person they'd sat with during a hard time when nobody else would. These people, years later, were somewhere praying for them. And I sat in enough rooms to know the difference. Some rooms felt heavy. Some rooms felt like someone was already there, waiting for them. And it was always the ones who had spent their life quietly making other people's lives a little easier. Not for credit, not for church, just because that's who they were. Their kindness had come back for them. I'm almost done. But this last thing matters most. I've got a notebook, small, brown, worn out. I've had it for 23 years. In it are over 200 names. Every person I sat with at the end. And next to each name I wrote one word. Peaceful, restless, afraid, ready. That's it. One word. And I think about my own name sometimes. I think about what someone's going to write next to Shirley Calloway when it's my turn. I still go to church every Sunday. I still wear this cross I got at 14. I still pray every night. But I'll tell you what I pray for now. I don't pray to get into heaven. I pray for clean hands. I pray that when it's my time, there's nobody out there that I owe an apology to. Nobody I left hanging. Nobody I said, not now to, one too many times. I pray that I did enough quiet good that somebody, somewhere, will think of me and send up a word. That's all. You still have time to decide your word. You know, the word someone writes next to your name, peaceful, restless, afraid, ready. You get to choose that, but not at the end, now. You choose it by how you live today. So tonight, before you go to bed, call one person you've been putting off. Just one. That's how you start choosing your word.